Welcome back. Now, ANC Secretary-General Fikile Mblalula says that he will soon inform the Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Executive Committees about the decision to reconfigure them. The ANC has decided to reconfigure the two provincial leadership structures within the framework of the party's constitution. Now, this means, among other things, that some NEC members may be brought in to beef up the administration of the party in the two provinces. Now, both the ANC's KZN and Gauteng areas performed poorly in the 2024 elections. And for analysis on these latest ANC developments and decisions, we joined now virtually by political writer, analyst and author, Dr Ebrahim Harvey. Dr. Harvey, good to have you with us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina. Good to be with you.
So the battle for the soul of the ANC continues on various fronts, both internally and then, of course, also externally, as we see the former president of the party, Jacob Zuma, still trying to get back in. What are your thoughts on these latest developments overall?
Well, Sakina, it's my column next week, but, ultimately, this is not a structuralist problem. You can go and look where the ANC dissolved the regions and structures before what happened. To dissolve is a bureaucratic response. So what they did, the decision to reconfigure is actually a compromise decision because Gwedi Mantashe, Paul Mashatile and others opposed the dissolution of KZN and Gauteng. And, that gives you some possibility of discussing the issue. But ultimately, let me tell you, it is not a constitutionalist matter. It is not a structuralist matter. It's got little to do with personnel, though there are factional issues. It's a big moment, let me tell you. It just comes, and it's got a lot to do with the very poor performance of the ANC in the 29th May 2024 elections when they dropped from 57% in 2019 to just around 40%. That is the reason why. But I'll tell you something. Let me explain something. They're looking in the wrong direction completely. This is a political and organizational problem which you have to address as to why did the ANC do so poorly. It has little to do with the constitution. It has little to do with structure. The voters made it very clear. Now, I was on SAFM early hours of the morning, 6 o'clock. I said the same thing that I'm saying to you now. Don't forget, I'm talking now of Gauteng. The ANC has been on a steep, serious political decline from 2016. Very few analysts even look at this to understand what has happened to the ANC in Gauteng. They lost 2016. They lost 2021 again, Ekurhuleni, Tshwane, and Joburg. So that told you very clearly the writing was on the wall for the problems of the ANC in Gauteng. In KZN, there's no doubt, the ANC was doing fairly well until the emergence of MK Zuma's party. It dramatically changed the election outcome. As you can see, the majority party in KZN, and that is the big problem. So really, at the end of the day, you're looking at political and organizational problems. It has little to do with personnel, although there could be an overlap with personnel and factions, and has little or nothing to do with the structure. What they're doing is to tinker and tamper with structure. Initially, there was a decision to dissolve the regions. I think that would have been the worst, because the worst thing to do with a crisis-ridden region is to dissolve it. It's the height of bureaucratic overreaction to problems that are fundamentally political and organizational. Just in a nutshell, that is where we're sitting at the moment. And I'm deeply concerned. I'll tell you why. If the ANC thinks that this is going to help it with the 2026 local government elections, it's key and critical. All the parties are looking towards 2026. And I'm sure to its own mind, it thought by this now dissolution and now reconfiguration, it will better prepare the ground and enable the ANC to perform well in next year's local government elections. I'm afraid if that was the overriding political purpose, it's going to fail dismally. And that is where we're sitting at the moment. I must just emphasize again to you, this is not a structuralist problem. This is a political and organizational decision, which is precisely why the ANC lost the elections on the 29th of November. They didn't lose the elections because of structure or this or that, even not personnel, except where you have leading figures, and a relationship between them and certain factions, which is in fact what is happening. I don't know if you've heard what is going on. In KZN in Gauteng, they're accusing Ramaphosa or Paul Mashatile to be siding, and Fikile Mblalula, with certain factions in both regions. That is how poisonous the situation has become. But I'll tell you, they're not looking at what is the root cause of the problem. It has little to do with what the ANC's constitution says around these things. It is fundamentally a political and organizational problem, which is primarily why it lost the 29th May elections last year.
So, Dr. Harvey, it seems then people are positioning themselves for the next ANC elective conference, and the NGC therefore becomes, a very pivotal battleground. We saw someone like the Premier of the Northern Cape, Dr. Zamani Saul, I think he was addressing the Youth League, where he was saying that they don't necessarily want to see any sort of division going into the local government elections and, just trying to hold steady. But given what has been decided here over the past weekend, is that not something that could have been deferred to the upcoming NGC, first and foremost? And also, as you say, there are all sorts of accusations being bandied about in the two provinces that are affected. And to that end, if you are going to punish and be punitive against poor performance in KZN and in Gauteng, how about the national leadership? The ANC nationally performed dismally. So surely what's good for the one should be good for the other.
No, for sure. But I think deferment to the NGC would not have been plausible politically, because I think tensions in this crisis, it's a crisis now that has enveloped the ANC, in addition to the crisis it's been in since it lost the 29th May elections. So you're right. It would have allowed them the space at the NGC to properly interrogate these issues. But I think they were hard-pressed to come to a decision. So bad was their performance in Gauteng and in KZN. But, the battles are on right now, I'll tell you, and I don't think the NGC, although you're right that it would have been a much better forum and if it had been deferred, but I think that it was not possible to do that because the pressures are building up, and you can see how the NEC sat on this issue and had difficulty, and where in fact the leadership was divided about how to deal with KZN and Gauteng, because they were looking in the wrong direction, in the wrong areas. It has little to do, even in the final analysis, with factions. It has to do with political, organizational reasons, and especially in KZN, the dramatic results for the MK party. I mean, in the 29th May election, everything changed, But just remember, it's also the fact that the MK party didn't only steal or take votes from the ANC. They took a considerable amount of votes from the EFF in KZN. And I won't be surprised that it disheartened Floyd Shivambu, because Floyd Shivambu was in charge for the EFF of KZN. And, I think there's no EFF leader, which might have led to him deciding to resign, was more disheartened by the results of the elections in KZN, because I think he thinks, and others in the EFF, they put a lot of work into, campaigning in KZN for an ANC victory.
So where to from here? Because the ANC is up against it. That much is clear. You have a local government election looming next year, and you already are seeing the divisions. And obviously, people are already positioning themselves for leadership positions at the next elective conference. So how does the ANC navigate that space from now until the local government elections?
A very, very weighty, important question. And I'll tell you something. The response to that kind of question, Sakina. The response to that kind of question, is very difficult to say, because I'll tell you something. The ANC on the whole, is in the most crisis-ridden state at the moment. Especially being informed by what had happened with the 29th May election results. And if you think that it's just with regional structures that the ANC is in trouble, you're wrong. There's problems in the NEC and serious factionalist problems and divisions in the ANC. But there's also very serious problems in the branches. The branches are constitutionally the most important structure of the ANC. And I can tell you the branches, especially since the ANC did so poorly in the 29th May, has fallen into further disarray and further crisis and deepened. Now, those are the most important structures of the ANC, and you saw I'm saying it's just not the regional executive committee and the problems there. If you dig deeper, I'll tell you something. I think the problems at the branch level, which is the most important structure, is even worse than what it is in the regional level. So, Sakina, on the whole, the ANC is in a very difficult situation, but if it doesn't address these problems in ways that will enhance its prospects in next year's election, then I can tell you there's no doubt that in the 2029 elections, the ANC is certainly going to maybe even drop below 40%, which is what they got on the 29th of May.
In 10 seconds or less, and I know this is unfair, but the government of national unity, how much of an impact is that having on the ANC's internal affairs?
Massive impact. And you can see it, all the debates. Look at the SACP going into the ANC alliance. The ANC, the SACP and COSATU also, but more the SACP. But you can see Panyaza Lesufi, there are people in the ANC, they are dead set, and they've been dead set against the GNU, but not that for the right reasons. I think some of the reasons are good and others are not. I mean, they've now never taken a stand on coalition moves, at local level between the ANC and the DA in any principled way. But they made a big thing of this. But no doubt, to answer your question, it has had a very, very negative. In fact, it might create such serious problems in the GNU that the GNU collapses, not because of its own internal weaknesses and contradictions, but because of the huge pressure the ANC is facing from within, and especially from COSATU and the SACP.
Dr. Harvey, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time. Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, political writer, analyst, author, unpacking the ANC's decision to reconfigure KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng.